Hey guys, Stealth here. In this wargame replay we're following Mr. Slay, who is the first person to send in a replay. And with this replay I want to show you that he knows very well how to manage units in the open field. It's something I'm not very good at. I'm more of an infantry minded guy. So if I'm looking at a map like this, which I rarely ever play in multiplayer, I need to add. If I play it in single player where you have the campaign happening on this map, I usually go for these towns. Because fighting with infantry is definitely one of my better elements, or at least that's where I feel more comfortable with. So this gameplay was very interesting for me because he's using a general USSR deck. As you can see, he's using a couple of one Tunguska, one T-72 BU, so he's bringing in the big guns right away. T-64 BV, a duel of 272As. We got a Sturm also coming up here. And he is still deploying units, so we can expect some more. Of course, UAZ at the front. This UAZ by one of his teammates is apparently going to stay behind, otherwise you wouldn't park it in a forest like that. FOBs are neatly spread out with his in the forest, so that's a good deployment over there. And I'm just going to skip ahead until we get to the actual interesting parts. You can see that he's also deployed, let's see where did it go here, Norov and some recon of course. Now with this setup I don't think that he has a lot of recon. He only has this one PT-85. If that thing dies, then he has no targets for all of these units. Although the Norovs capture or carry medium optics. If those things die, then these tanks will not have a spotter for them. So it's pretty risky to go with one recon, but okay, let's go with it. So he parks one UAZ immediately into this zone. I myself would go for parking the UAZ in there, because this is a bit more concealed than just having it open here in the town. Of course, it is pretty far behind your lines that the enemy has to go before they actually spot that. And this, you could say, is an area which might get targeted by artillery, because it's the only concealment combined with these bushes. But still, I think this is a pretty risky play. Anyway, moving on. He's pushing up past this town and straight into the enemy zone. Quite risky, but on the other hand very clever, because at this stage of the game the enemy cannot have deployed a lot of forces yet. And I guess that's what he's going for. So he's deploying his tanks in the middle, in this line right here, which gives them a good overlapping field of fire over this entire area. The Norovs will take care of this small forest in here. We got our Tunguska, which is also going to be covering these tanks. And he got the PT-85 over on this side to cover with recon. That does however mean that he does not have recon on this flank. So he does know very well what's going on in there, because the PT-85 is quite a decent recon vehicle with very good optics, a gun, some armor and an ATGM. But on this side he is, well, virtually blind until those Norovs with their medium optics start spotting stuff which is in here. Tunguska is sitting out in the open. Now that does give it the advantage of having a good field of fire. You can even see some artillery shells flying over. It does give the advantage of having a good field of fire. On the other hand, it makes sure that the Tunguska, if it's spotted, is going to be the primary target of artillery. It is a 100-point vehicle, so it is very expensive, and you don't want to lose these because you don't have that many of them to begin with. But apparently he realizes that seed might come in, so he turns off the main gun and goes only with the SAMs that are on this vehicle. Now he's pushing in with one recon vehicle in here. It's possible, but I would prefer recon infantry here. But maybe this can just work. Now the recon spots these guys. The Noros on the left flank are also pushing up. And apparently someone got spotted because the T-72 BU is no longer in cover. Now it is. But because it fired, it got detected. We can see a command helicopter taking off there. It gets wiped out instantly by the Tunguska. And the Tunguska does have to relocate and tries to capture or tries to go after this helicopter. But I think it's too far and too low for this Tunguska to really go after. Instead, this position starts to take a lot of artillery fire, so he has to move these guys in order not to lose them. Now at this stage I would start calling in some infantry for this forest and some recon over here. Preferably recon infantry, because they can make the best use of this cover. Also, we can see that these Norovs are not blinking, so that means they have been spotted. And while they are not very expensive vehicles, they are definitely in a threatening position for the units over here. So in a situation like this, I would retreat them to just behind the tree line, or move them inside the forest to make sure that they were no longer spotted. Because let's see what they have that can spot them. Yeah, they got rangers in here. They don't really have anything that can fire at them right away, other than maybe this TOW 2 if it relocates. But again, then it'll have to deal with the Tunguska. They have 2 tanks, 2 MBT-70s, and they have an artillery battery of 2 M109A2s, which could go after the Norovs. Anyway, back to his gameplay. Okay, I did watch the replay before I recorded this, but I did not know that this was going to happen. So the intuition that I had of moving these guys before they take Artie was definitely the right one. I'm not kidding you here, guys. I did not know that this thing was going to take fire. I just quickly skimmed over the replay and I thought, yeah, this is interesting, but I did not see that this Norov would take fire. But with the wargame experience that you build up over a period of time, you can expect these kind of things. Also, these units, while on the one hand it's good to push up with them, on the other hand it's pretty risky because you don't have any recon. You don't know if there's a line of M1A2 Abrams over there which are starting to nail down your vehicles. So at this point it definitely becomes imperative that he brings in additional units. Now, he does bring in some infantry and a BMP-2. I'm thinking that either he was saving his points or that it was a low point tactical game, because he only brought in one of these. Now, of course, the BMP-2 is somewhat expensive, and if there's Motostrelki in there, that's a 35 point investment. But bringing in groups of 2, especially if you want to do forest cleaning like this, it's going to be more effective and safer for all units involved. In the meanwhile, we got a Lynx TOW 2 flying over, and he's going to regret that, because the Tunguska nails him instantly. Very good play here of instantly turning the weapon system off again, at least the radar guided guns, to make sure that they were not targeted by seed. Although in this entire game I have not seen a seed plane since. Still, it's good practice to make sure that your seed weapons or your seed susceptible weapons are not capable of being targeted by keeping the radar off. So pushing in with a BMP-2 here, trying to get into this forest, and considering the fact that he got this far without being challenged, that means that there is at least nothing on the outskirts, or that whatever is there has decided not to fire at him. So offload the Motostrelki 90. Those do come with some nice RPG, so if there is tanks in here, and as viewers we know that there's tanks in here because we can switch to neutral, but he at this point didn't know that yet. One thing though, I would have sent my BMP that way and my Motostrelki that way. Because right now if the BMP gets hit, that is going to cause a more or less splash effect. And the splash effect is going to impact both the BMP and the Motostrelki. So the Motostrelki will lose some morale and thus some combat effectiveness. So that RPG of theirs with their high AP power might not hit. So spreading these guys out, one to go to the one side of the forest and one to go to the other side, and then converging on a location like that, that might have been a bit better. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. A group of Urals is coming in to resupply Tungushkas and resupply the Tunguska and to rearm them. And in the meanwhile, just as I skimmed away, that BMP-T got taken out, or the BMP-2. Motostrelki lose half their forces to a tank, and they wipe out the tank. So still, even though he lost the BMP and half of the Motostrelkis, I think that was a 35 point investment, maybe 40, and he killed a 60 point tank with it. So it was not maybe the best play, but in the end he did do well with it, because he got more points in kills than he spent in units. So more units coming in. This Norov was spotted briefly, and a friend of his or a teammate puts down, here's recon, be careful. Now that's a good spot, because there is indeed recon, or there was. It might have just been taken out by something, I'm not sure what hit there. But at least this Norov for now is pretty safe. He's bringing in some Urals. In this situation I could have also, or I would have also brought in a recon helicopter. A KA-52 for example would have been a very, very helpful asset here, because it would have been able to spot stuff from the safety of these lines. And considering the fact that he has barely taken any fire from this side, the chances that there is AA is not very high. So that could have been an alternative. He's also bringing in a Nona, which is the mortar carrier, and another BMP-1P with some more infantry. Now I found it interesting that he brought only one of these mortar carriers, because when I bring these things I always bring a group of 3 or 4. But that's because I like a large volume of fire onto a specific target. But of course, if you're just shelling single targets, this could work, having a single Nona. Speed it up a little, because moving these units about, of course, isn't too interesting. Motostrelki, or the BMP-1P, gets taken out. Mainly, I was going to say mainly and mostly at the same time, that didn't work out. Mainly because he didn't have any recon. He did not know what was out here. So next time if you're trying something like this, and now he had to do a sort of force recon where he had to force units to engage his units before they got spotted. It does work, but it does take logistics and you have to resupply and repair these tanks afterwards. Still, with a group of 3 tanks here, it's pretty effective. But my preference would still be to use a bit more recon. He's still managing his units over here, I think, the T-80, because he's not offloading this recon. He does have Razvedkas here, which is a good call, because if you can put those on the edge of this forest, you might be able to spot whatever is in here hiding. So it might be a tank. An MBT-70 shows itself, and apparently the T-72BU is not classed as in cover. So there must be a spotter here nearby, and I'm curious to see what. They don't have any recon on this side. Yeah, now it's in cover again. Maybe it just fired and the MBT-70 had an idea where it was, but other than that they got no recon. But the thing starts to take instant artillery fire. Clearly the good choice, because it's a 180 point vehicle. You want to wound it as much as you can with artillery, but you're not going to kill it. Again, a push into this forest gets stopped by the MBT, which has survived, and a rifleman. But now he's also getting assistance from this flank, this BRDM-3, which is spotting the MBT-70. So now he should be able to push into this forest with a bit more support from both his mortar, the Nona back here, his infantry, and the tanks he has around here. Now these Urals are empty. In this situation I would send them back, because even though they do have 163 supplies still on board, it's not that interesting to keep them around. You're better off in these situations just send them back, get them all the way back to the FOB, and once they're back there, get them resupplied and then send them back. That way you're going to save yourself some time. Still he has this Ural, probably with more Razvedkas, hiding in the back. Not sure why. Don't really agree with that play there. So this MBT-70 gets wiped out instantly by the T-72BU. It got spotted again by the BRDM. So now they need to start pushing up a little. And they are leading by a good almost 1300 points. Actually almost 1400 by now. Keep in mind though that one of their players, this Chi guy, left right at the start of the battle. So it's 3 versus 4. That means that there's a bit more pressure on them, but of course not as much as an 8v5 and a 10v10. Which I would suggest no longer calling a 10v10, because you rarely, if ever, play 10v10 nowadays. Most people leave in the first few minutes, and then you got a couple who leave after they lose a lot of forces or once they see that the battle is lost. So let's not call it 10v10 again, but say 9v7 or something like that. Anyway, he puts up a smoke screen using his Nona back here. Good call, because now the BMP can make it to the other side safely. I would also push in with some cheaper T-72s, because they are very effective at cleaning out a forest. Because they're only 45 points, they can still do a lot of damage for that 45 points, and they can support the infantry and the BMP-1. We got Razvedkas pushing up. They are responding with a couple of commandos 90s. But so long as these guys don't get in range of the Norovs, they are no threat to these lines. Because they haven't spotted this these Razvedkas yet. And now he's pushing up with the Ural. I'm not sure if this was an actual intentional play or if he's just trying to do a force recon, just sending an empty truck into enemy territory to see what is going on. And judging by how far he can make it up these lines without taking any sort of ATGM fire or tank shells or whatever, that means that this area is pretty clear. So pushing up with a very cheap Ural like this, only a 5-point truck, and seeing that you can go all the way through this town and only take fire over here, which is not even heavy fire, these are just APCs, that means that this area is pretty clear. So once you see that, I would immediately start pushing up all of these units, especially these Igla Ents, because they don't have that good of a range. So get these guys into this forest line, start moving Razvedkas up a little bit to cover over here and spot the infantry which was spotted there when it fired at the truck. Because these guys cannot see anything. Again, the PT-85 is slightly out of position, this would have been a bit better. Tunguska could also move up, but by this point in the game, the right flank was also doing a very good job at pushing up. So, let's see what he's called. Serja, if you're watching this thing, very good play there. Very well covered that flank and taken over that town. Now he's doing another scout run with a Ural. Again, spotting the infantry, which consequently takes fire from the Norov. But unfortunately, only the Norovs are in range. They can only fire at those. So again, these tanks would have been very helpful, especially these three. The Sturm didn't have anything to fire at because there were no vehicles around. But this was more or less just a waste of that transport. A couple of choppers come in, and I think that these might be empty because I don't think they're cruising towards dropping off troops. But for the Tunguska, these things are of course a very nice snack. He also got a Tor in here for longer range airplane defense. And he wipes out 2 choppers right away. This causes, I'm not sure, yeah, that was the owner, Heavy Rain to surrender. I think that there are now 2 NATO players left, maybe 3. I'm not very sure. Speed it up a little bit. He's bringing in some more BMPs. And again here he's pushing up with a Norov. Now a Norov does not have a lot of frontal armor, only 2. So if infantry with an ATGM manages to fire at it, it's going to kill it. I would have preferred in this situation to push up with Razvedkas first, say to about this position, where they could spot the infantry, have the Norov hang back a little bit, kill the infantry, and then push up with the Norov. But again, that's my preference, and for him it worked reasonably well because he did take a hit, but he did kill the infantry. He's also pushing up in this side with Norovs, but again without any recon and without any AA. And as we're going to see, that is, while pretty heroic, kind of stupid, because it is going to cost him some of these units, and especially T-80B, which is an 85-point tank, could have been better used if it had more cover. And here he's getting punished for his decision. This Tiger sees a lot of very lightly armored targets, or at least lightly defended AA-wise. So the transports for the Motostrelki get taken down, the T-72B goes down, T-80B goes down, Motostrelki, one of the groups goes down. There's the end of the T-80B. And this could have been prevented if he'd known that that Tiger was in there. Now I know this is a stealthy chopper, it has good stealth, these things are hard to detect. But with recon, this thing could not have killed this many forces. So Mr. Slay, be careful when you're doing pushes like this. Yes, they can work if you're reasonably sure that there is not a lot of forces left. Now of course I'm not sure how well you were watching this flank when you were doing your own operations in the middle, but when I'm engaging an operational area like this, and I have no knowledge of the surrounding area, or not very detailed knowledge, it's reasonably safe not to go in there. Because if you go in there, you're facing the unknown, and the unknown in Wargame cannot be countered appropriately. Now the game is pretty well so far. They're winning by a lot of points, 2,000 ahead so far. And it seems like NATO is just, I don't know, maybe they all left, maybe they all decided to start a campfire in the back of the map. Let's see what they're doing. It seems that they're not bringing in a lot of new units. We get a couple of M1 Abrams over there. They have a couple of transports, but without the infantry, because I guess the infantry was just went walking to these bushes. A couple of Lynxes, Chinooks, one command vehicle, and some artillery. Notable about this area is no AA. This entire area is no AA. So if he would have had a scout chopper and noted that the scout chopper could make it through all the way, then he could have pushed in here a lot faster. Now again, as I mentioned before in earlier videos, for me right now, as an armchair general, more or less, because I'm not actually in the battle, it's very, very easy to comment. But I've been in these situations, and I think as a viewer you have too, so we all know that I might be presenting it as easy, but it is not as easy. It's just, you're in the moment, you're in the game, and you might not see these things. You might be thinking, oh, how can I help my ally on this flank? Why did I lose that many forces? How's my other ally doing? Where are these forces that I'm opposing? Where is the NATO forces? So there's a lot going through your mind. Let's push it up a little. Got a T-80UM back here. I think this unit was just brought into this forest, because keeping a 175 point tank in forests like this, where it can no longer support any of these troops, I think that was just brought in, and they hadn't had the time to micromanage that unit yet. It's pushing up some BMP-1Ps, again with Motostrelki inside them. Pushing up some Razvedkas. Now at least the zone here has been neutralized. They are not getting any more income from that zone, so that is a job well done. But still, these tanks are back here. They could have been pushed up. Now, he might be sure that there is no AA here, but I'm not too sure about that. Of course, he does have Razvedkas here, and he knows that there are some Abrams there, but otherwise the recon in this area is pretty weak. So be careful as you're doing maneuvers like these to really try and get as much recon in here. And of course he is pushing it with Taurus right now, which is a good anti-helicopter defense. But a tank in these lines would have really turned this force into a lot of expensive scrap heap. So be careful when you're doing pushes like that. 2 minutes left on the game, and they still got 2,000 points to go, so you might be guessing what's going on. This flank by Sergith is clearing out Anna. They've captured Boris, so they can now bring in forces from that angle. The only zone that NATO has left is center, and this is when the fight is just hopeless. Or at least for Blue 4, I should add. So we got some latest moments developments, and Apache coming in here, but this is very, very expensive to bring in, especially since he doesn't have any recon in here. So I guess the NATO guy was just grasping at straws, trying to get some sort of defense going on here. So he's pushing up this side again. Okay, another guy left. Splash, that's another NATO player. Again though, not a lot of recon. He did do very, very well though. He got 1800 points in kills, rounded up, and he lost about 700 points. So I think that this was a very, very good game to show you how you can approach an area like this in the middle, where you don't have a lot of towns, which is something that, as I mentioned, I'm not very good at. You're going to have to use a lot of mobile defense, as I would like to call it, where you have a lot of units which can support each other, like a mortar that he brought in, that Nona, like some AA, because that Tunguska managed to make it through the entire game, and some tanks and infantry and a combination of recon to just capture everything, to make sure that everything was still safe. Also, some improvement points: bring more recon, because you did not have a lot of recon in this area, and that did cost you some units. I love the smokescreen attack that you did in that forest. That was very, very well executed. But if you had shelled that forest first and then put up a smokescreen, those Motostrelkis might have had a better chance to survive, because the troops inside would have had less reactionary power and they would not have died as quickly. Still, well played to Mr. Slay here. If you want me to analyze your replay as well, send it to me via one of the file transferring services. A link on how you can find your replay file is in the description below. I look forward to seeing your epic battles, so if you have anything you want me to show on this channel, if you have any epic battles or specific kills that you want me to see and that you want the world to see, send me that replay, but do let me know in a comment why the replay is special. What kind of deck were you using? What was this special moment? And why was it special to you? Because that will make it a lot more interesting for me, and it makes it a lot more easy for me to pinpoint those moments, because otherwise I might not see them because I'm looking somewhere else. For now, thanks for watching, hope you had fun, and see you next video.